Okay, I'm back. Week 3. We're looking at the social and psychological theories in later life development. So this week there's a lot of theories, so I apologize. It isn't the most necessarily exciting information unless you really like theory. And theories are a way for us to see things through different lights, and as you even grow as a therapist and a clinician, you learn a lot about theory, but eventually you're going to develop your own style and your own approach, probably taking a lot from different theories. Some of you may be very, psychodynamic or very humanistic or very cognitive behavioral, but you probably will use different approaches. That's very typical. But today we're going to look at some of these theories in relationship to aging. So we look at things from a qualitative and quantitative standpoint. A quantitative standpoint is an emphasis and the number of something. So that's where we get a lot of our data that's numbers, mathematical. Whereas qualitative data emphasize the kind of things people do or how they do them. So asking questions, getting a response. Again, two different ways of measuring things. A lot of times older people speak in metaphors, so it's a figure of speech. I know in psychology, or I should say in counseling, I use them all the time. I have all kinds of metaphors. I speak in metaphors. A lot of that's because my supervisor did that, and I've adapted that. There's a mechanist metaphor, which views the person as a machine with a development dictated by determining forces such as biology. There are organic metaphors. It sees the person unfolding like a flower. There's information processing metaphor, which is individual competency with internal and external sources of potential. There are narrative metaphors, which views development as the story of a person's life. There's emergent self-metaphor, which emphasizes choices and motivations. There's transcendent self-metaphor. The self is shaped by experience beyond individual ego development models. And then, so these are different ways that people may communicate in metaphors. The first theory I want to talk about is Sigmund Freud, which we've all heard about. The father of psychology, right? He's why people think of psychology being a couch in a room, which I'm sure that's changed a little bit, that bit of stereotyping like we talked about the last chapter. But Sigmund Freud theorized that unconscious psychological process affect our thoughts and behaviors. So this is where we get psychodynamic theory. And this starts in early childhood and it forms our whole lives. The next theory that is discussed in the book is Carl Jung, and his shifted from sexuality. So with Freud we talk about things being very phallic and the Oedipal complex and all those kinds of things, and with Jung we look at the potential of the unconscious to contribute positively to growth. So the individuals develop internal self-potential after 40 through balancing competing opposites. Feminine and masculine, love, power, extroversion, and introversion. So again, he has a different standpoint than Freud. Then we have Erik Erikson, and then we have, and he has, the whole stages of development, and each stage of life is identified with a development task. So from, again, infancy to adulthood. Another one is Jane Lovinger. She looks at the ego development. One becomes aware of discrepancies between conventions and one's own behavior. We have Daniel Levinson, focused on men's lives, so he focused strictly on men. The life cycle is a sequence of eras, each with its own biopsychosocial character. The life structure is the underlying pattern of design of a person's life with the primary component of relationships. We have gender splitting. Levinson's concept referring to a sharp division between feminine and masculine. Adult development. Transitions, points at which the person's development moves between one phase and the next. The development perspective focuses on the unfolding process of the individual. And so this is where all these types of theories may shape how you approach aging. You might find one theory more accurate than another theory, but again, it's theory, it's speculative. Everyone has their different opinions, and their different beliefs on what makes sense to them. But this is some of our forefathers, I guess you could say, in psychology. This is what some of them have discovered as far as the lifespan and how things work. So the distinction between life periods often is in phases. So you'll see, or stages. You see often in some of these theories, there's different stages. So there's infancy, there's toddler stage, all those kinds of things. So you'll see that a lot in these different theories. Young adulthood is considered between 18 to 35. A lot of times during that time, people are establishing identities, occupational goals. Young adults are increasingly currently postponing marriage. You can see that in our society. What was common a long time ago was people were getting married very young, and now people are getting married older and older and older, postponing things, which means children happen later. Career is more important first, which has caused some shifts in our society that aren't always the best shifts. Let's see. Adults who aren't necessarily would be considered a minority culture are pressed to acculturate quicker, to embrace the dominant culture. This isn't necessarily a good thing, because you lose part of your culture. So these are some of the things that are the pressures on young adults. Young adults have a lot of pressures when you think of now even the media and how that's changed things with keeping up with things, and all the things that are infiltrated into their minds all the time very fast, and they can get to things very fast. I think of, I spent many years I worked on the main campus for 13 years with the college students, and all the things that I saw and how things changed. Even the idea of helicopter parents, where the parents just hover and expect to hear from the students all the time, and that wouldn't have been the case when I was a college student. My mom couldn't get a hold of me whenever she wanted, or I couldn't just send her a text message. And this idea of the sense of entitlement, and this wasn't here 10 years or so ago, that they want what their parents have as soon as they graduate from college, and that's a lot of pressure, and at times very unrealistic. And these are some of the pressures that young adults are facing. Middle-aged adults, that's where you hear the stereotypical midlife crisis. Ego resilience is the general capacity for flexible and resourceful adaptation to external and internal stimuli. These are some of the characteristics. There's roles changes, so this is where we see maybe empty nesters. You're caring for potentially aging parents. Coming to terms with what is and what's not possible, so maybe some of your dreams not coming true. Coping with some biology changes. My mom just recently fought breast cancer, and she's a breast cancer now survivor. These are things that older adults are having to deal with. Having to look at professional respect and earnings and retirement. These are the kinds of things that midlife adults are dealing with. And then we have later life. One third of our lifespan is at an older age, and I think when we're young we don't really think about that, but it is something to think about, because how do we want to spend that 1/3 of our age? We have to adjust to deteriorating physical strength and health, adjust to retirement and reduced income potentially, adjust to the death of a spouse, establishing an explicit association with one's age group, so relating to the people in our age, adopting and adapting societal roles in a flexible way, establishing satisfactory physical arrangements. So these are some things that we have to think about. We have to think about long term in that lifespan, or I'm sorry, in that age range of the later lifetime, and those aren't always easy things to think about. But again, that's like the mindset has to kind of transition to what's next, how can I be prepared, and then I'm not overwhelmed once I'm there. There's an activity theory, and this theory implies that social activity is the essence of life for all people of all ages. Like I said, I have a neighbor, and she she's 90 years old and she's out there watering her lawn, and she said very clearly to my father that I would rather die watering my lawn than sitting on the couch watching TV. And I think there's something to be said. Whether physically you can do things, I think mentally staying sharp is important, but also too, if you are able to get out of the house and you are able to do things, it is really important to keep yourself going. This theory addresses the complexity of aging. It looks at the impact of health, gender, and culture, and socioeconomic status, and addresses the importance of individuals' personalities. Now there's the disengagement theory, which contends that it is normal to reduce activity and seek more passive roles as one ages. And this theory has created a lot of controversy. It sees disengagement as a mutual withdrawal of the elderly from society and society from the elderly. And so again, it's talking about that separation, which you could see why it has been criticized, because again, it's kind of saying some of this stuff is okay, which what we're looking at is like maybe this thought process isn't okay, and we need to embrace it instead of separate from it. And there's continued theories. Let's see here. One theory is the exchange theory. Individuals and groups act to maximize rewards and minimize costs. Interaction will be maintained if it is more rewarding than costly, which again, when we get older, the income may change. So we're looking for things that are rewarding, not costing us a lot of money. We see a difference in roles in gender and ethnicity. We look at role. That's the status a person holds, which that may change as people age. There's aspects of how a male is viewed as being older and how a female is viewed, and that could cause some controversy right there for a person. Ethnicity, depending on your ethnicity and how your community views elderly, again, that could change too as over time. There's a lot of studies in this chapter that might be worth looking at. The PowerPoint slides hone in on them a little bit more in depthly, and of course your book does as well. But take a look at them and see what your thoughts are. Again, going over this, theory is, again, it's a person's opinion, and you don't always have to agree with every theory, but it's good to know theory and see where people are coming from, because a lot of theories are used in research and whatnot. And like I said, you may have different opinions on what's right and what's wrong, and that's okay. And oftentimes in counseling, you use different ones. So I hope this is helpful. Like I said, answer your discussion board. If you have any questions about anything, please don't hesitate to email me or give me a call. Until next week, have a great week. Thanks.